Pecha Kucha 10, Bone Noir Comics, and Gordon Liu. While I'd love to talk about one thing for 20 slides like I did last time, because it's a Smiley show and I know it inside out because it's my thing, I can do that, but it's best for normally to just talk about different things in passing. And here's the first one, Bone by Jeff Smith. I think it's from the kind of mid-90s. It's independent comic. I think it's 10 volumes as sold as graphic novel. It's a very interesting thing. I've read the fourth volume out of context, and I'll talk a bit about my feelings. So the first thing I noticed is like the art style is like kind of cartoony and then really cartoony. Like if you look at the way normal characters are drawn versus how the bones, the little white dudes are drawn, they're super cartoony. But they fit. It's a lot like kind of the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, and I get the impression that that's kind of how Bone is. It's a lot like Lord of the Rings. You have these little people who, in this massive epic, who rise to the challenge of being heroes. I will read the rest of Bone if I can get my hands on it. I think it's rather good. Simple paneling, nice artwork, good narrative. So university work, I for my final movie, illustrated a poem. It's on the right hand side of this. I'll spare you the terrible reading. I've already done one of those, and it'll already be on the channel when it goes up. But while I was doing the movie, I tried to incorporate a lot of different things. So here's my like 4 frames that I turned into a very simple animation. It's like a horse and carriage flies into this cauldron, which then the camera effectively pans up, and then the circle of the cauldron turns into a sun in the sky of the landscape of the next thing. And I got this from William Kentridge, this idea of like drawing kind of quite creative segues. He works mostly in charcoal, large, does stop frame animation. Awesome dude. Sometimes it's political as well, so it's not just visually interesting. Sometimes it's quite poignant. Terry Gilliam, Monty Python fame, wanted to do something in the style of his crazy antics, because collage can be fun and it can be interesting. It can also be interesting when it makes sense, but it's usually better when it doesn't. So yeah, I was going to have, this is John Taylor, the guy who wrote the poem that I'm illustrating, like the horse and carriage that goes through the narrative kind of comes out of his mouth, that opens in that kind of Terry Gilliam style. In the end, I don't even think this made the final cut, but it's like, it's good to think about craziness and try and incorporate it. And also another example of collage that I thought was quite good is like how the School of Life use it. It's not as off the wall as Terry Gilliam, but it's zany and it's entertaining, but it doesn't overpower the kind of strong stories that are effectively at the heart of the movies, which are famous authors, political people, and stuff like that. So I try to do a little bit of internet jokage. The line is, for Flora was a goddess and a woman, so I try to kind of represent this as I'm saying it with these images in kind of like that Scott Steiner typography video that I may or may not have referenced at some point that I really do like. I probably did. In between doing my Smiley book, which I'm still doing, I went and grabbed a bit of charcoal and a bit of newsprint paper that I got a few weeks ago, and I went and did this. No underdrawing. That's why it's not what it was in my head, but it's, it was interesting that I decided to take a break from something to do something else. Here's a poster I did on a Rezo printer. I'm not a fan of Rezo printing. It ties into the poem. I've got the horses, the carriage route, London to Southampton, which is what the poem's about. I screwed this up a lot the last time, so I decided to make sure when I came back I had a foolproof composition. Noir comics is a part of my year. I want to try and do a noir graphic novel, although I think that might have gone out the window as of yesterday. But as an art style, it's definitely something I want to work to. Someone recommended this book to me, so I picked it up. Sean Martinborough comes quite highly acclaimed and recommended. I read like the preface, and he kind of talks, this isn't about teaching you how to draw, this is about how to make noir. He's got several pages on the tools he uses, and I'm in two minds about going traditional. I want to use my Pentel brush pen, and I've got some fine liners and all that, but crow quills and full-on Black India ink, I don't know. But then I've been using charcoal this week, so who can say? This was when I was flicking through the book, one of the pages that caught my eye. I love those 1990s Sentinels, and just seeing them in the black and white. It's quite powerful. And obviously, Batman in black and white is just, you just can't knock it, can you? So hopefully I'll come up with something like that. So another thing I've been looking at is Every Frame a Painting. He discusses people who are really good at what they do in movies. Jackie Chan's on the list because he's the king of action comedy. He breaks down why it works, the cinematography that Jackie Chan uses, why when he's in Western films it's not as good as his Eastern films. And then following the YouTube train through Jet Li and all that, I ended up at Gordon Liu, handsome Gordon Liu. I feel like I've seen him before, and then turns out, yes, he's in Kill Bill. But some of his fight scenes are so insanely ambitious. It I'm a huge fan of like Hong Kong cinema, and those kind of fight scenes. Monty, who kind of did the Dead Fantasy series and other things. I would love to do something like that, not as labor as intensive as what he does, but it's definitely something that's on my list. I have to figure out how, and do it. So that brings us to the end. So what do I need to do from now till next week? Finish my Smiley book, prepare for the hand-in, so I can go do all the things I haven't done this term over the holiday, which includes the dissertation, sorting out an internship and actually securing it, actually finding the Smiley show at a home online, like I said last week, and then just focusing, on everything I want to do, making sure it's at the center of this year as best as possible. Easier said than done, but the Smiley book I'm doing is a lot of hard work, and I am trying to commit to it, and I don't know if I could commit to anything else quite as much as I've committed to this, so it bodes well for the future, but we'll have to see where we end up. So that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 10. I will see you next time.